Windmills have played an important role in the creation of Holland. If it wasn't for these mills, Holland would be a lot smaller today. The windmill was almost perfected back in the 17th century and has changed very little since. Hi, I'm Jake de Boer and this is the Travel Magazine. Holland is a land of great contrasts, from huge cosmopolitan cities to tiny fishing villages. We'd like to show you Holland from different points of view.
His father, grandfather and great-grandfather were millers at Kinderdijk. More than half of Holland lies below sea level. Good water control was just as necessary in the past as it is today. Springtime in Holland is dominated by bulbs in full bloom. Under the blue sky in the coastal area between Leiden and Haarlem lies Keukenhof. Keukenhof is a park covering an area of more than 28 hectares. Beneath old trees and along countless pathways, millions of bulbs are planted each year. Not too many of us are aware that these very flowers were growing on the steppes and mountainsides of Greece and Tibet at least 2,000 years ago. The flower bulb industry in Holland evolved from a 16th century novelty when the wild tulip was introduced from Turkey to become an important part of the country's economy. You will find large fields of bulbs in many parts of Holland. The Dutch people have developed the blooming business scientifically. Besides giving untold pleasure to millions of people around the world, the bulb business pays off in foreign currency from some 130 countries. This tiny country grows more than 850 varieties of tulips and over 500 varieties of daffodils. In total, Holland produces approximately 5 billion bulbs per year, of which 85% are exported. From Schiphol, they are flown all over the world. Four runways of 3,400 meters each were built to allow simultaneous landings and takeoffs. The airport lies 4 meters below sea level and was, up until a century ago, a huge lake, which often threatened Amsterdam with its raging storms. Schiphol's name is derived from an old document dated 1447, where it was referred to as Ship's Hole, or Hell for Ships. In contrast today, more than 7 million people arrive or depart annually to and from 130 foreign destinations. The best view of old Amsterdam and its port is seen from the luxurious motor launches that ply the canals. Each year, more than 2 million people see the city from one of these glass-topped boats. In the last 2 decades, Amsterdam has joined Paris and Rome to become an important European tourist center, and in recent years is gaining still more in popularity. Consequently, tourism has become a very important industry. In the year 1275, Amsterdam became a city and was named after the river Amstel. Canals were dug and laid out in concentric form in the 16th and 17th centuries. These canals were built to enable East Indian merchants to transport their wares right into the heart of the old city. Patrician homes and warehouses were also built. These still front the canals today. Amsterdam has no less than 6,800 architectural monuments from the 16th and 17th centuries. By the 17th century, the Netherlands merchant marine had trading posts all over the world. A cultural explosion occurred due to extreme material prosperity. 17th century names such as Rembrandt, Vermeer and Frans Hals are world famous, but Amsterdam does not rest on its historic laurels. Today there are hundreds of studios of modern painters, mostly along the canals. The city center entices fashion-conscious women to shop in its many boutiques and fashionable stores. Calver Street, although not inexpensive, is a delight to both the Dutch women and visitor alike.
The travel magazine will be back with more of Holland right after this.
There are more than 3,000 kilometers of railroad lines, with more than half of them electrified. Most people traveling long distances do commute to and from work by train. Welcome to the smallest town in the world. It's called Madurodam, and at your feet is a glimpse into Dutch life from the medieval past up to the present. Everything is on a miniature scale. The buildings are marvelous replicas of ancient and modern architecture currently in existence in Holland. Madurodam was built between 1950 and 1952. Like most active cities, Madurodam continues to expand and improve. Rotterdam. In Rotterdam, a passenger boat was converted some years ago to quarters for university students. Rotterdam has now become the largest port in the world. It started only as a humble fishing village on the banks of the river Rotte. The city steadily grew and eventually became one of the most important towns in the Netherlands. The Euromast, rising high into the sky, is the symbol of Rotterdam's energy. From the mast, there is a magnificent view of the harbor and city. Rotterdam has a wide variety of concert halls, theaters, museums, cinemas, parks, sport fields, and even a zoo. After the Second World War, Rotterdam rebuilt its city center and docks. New residential areas were constructed at the same time. The result was a skyline that somehow reflects the city's character. The town of Marken was once upon a time an island. It lies close to Volendam and has become very well known for its quaint little houses and costumes people wear. For many years, it was an industrious little fishing village. Men fished primarily for herring in what was then called the Zuiderzee. Today, there are only a few fishing boats left, but traditions of the past have carried on. If one is interested in exploring in detail one or two small historic towns, one has an interesting choice. Their size, like that of Holland, lends itself to discovery. The city of Enkhuizen, for example, in the northern part of Holland, is easily reached by train or road from Amsterdam. A few fishing boats still go out from its harbor and do very well. Many of the larger boats, which were freighters in the canals of Holland, have been converted to passenger vessels.
We'll be back with more of the Travel Magazine right after this.
One could say that the province Friesland is the Scotland of Holland. Here live a fiercely independent people, proud of their separate history, language, and traditions. This is the country where Rembrandt found his wife Saskia in 1634 and where Peter Stuyvesant was born. He was the founder of New York. And yes, that's right, he's also the cigarette man. The lakes are scattered over the country from northeast to southwest, about 40 miles long. Yachtsmen can spend weeks of sailing without ever having to cross their own wake. This province, with more than half of it below sea level, has 14 large and 16 small lakes, making this area one of the greatest water sports centers on the continent. What the mountains of Switzerland mean to skiers, Friesland means to sailors. Some of the finest old boats for sailing are found in Friesland. Occasionally, you can still buy one of these boats which are more than 75 years old. Obviously, they are hard to find. It is very interesting, however, to see these old boats restored to their original beauty. The city of Hindelopen, with a population of approximately 1,000 people, received city rights in the year 1225. The citizens for centuries were cabinet makers and painted some of the most beautiful designs on their furniture. A small collection of real antiques can still be found in the local museum. Fortunately, a few people are still applying the trade of their forefathers. Drenthe in the northern part of Holland is a province of great natural beauty. The landscape alternates between wooded areas and countless open fields and moorlands, dotted with small pools, flocks of sheep, and picturesque villages. In some areas, it is as if time stood still for many years. The town of Giethoorn was founded by a group of flagellants. They came about 1280 from regions bordering on the Mediterranean, which had been afflicted by a series of disasters. The village owes its characteristic appearance to peat digging. The diggers of former times worked in a disorganized way. They dug up peat at places that suited them the best. This led to the formation of large and small lakes. In order to transport the peat, ditches and canals were excavated. Many houses were built on little islands and could only be reached by a high bridge. Up until today, there are no roads, only canals and bridges. Everything is transported by boat. Most of the canals have one-way traffic only, in order to prevent traffic jams and collisions. According to legend, when people started to settle there, the place was densely populated with wild goats, so it was called Goatshorn or Giethoorn, the Venice of the North. Not far from Giethoorn is a town called Staphorst. Strange costumes have been worn in this town since about the year 1200, and no one sees any reason to change. Staphorsters are very unfriendly to people who tote cameras. Their dialect is unlike any spoken elsewhere in Holland. On weekdays you're ignored, but on Sundays, don't dare raise a camera, because if you do, it will be at your own risk. Times are changing, even in Staphorst. People are becoming friendlier, particularly the younger ones. When was the last time you saw 5 castles in one day? In Holland, you can do this. Some have moats, drawbridges, and those charming arrangements for pouring hot oil on unwelcome visitors. Others are far more welcoming and have been converted to hotels. Then there is the Haar Castle in Haarzuilen, just outside Utrecht. It looks as though it walked right off a Walt Disney set. When one owner decided that the nearby village was too close, he moved the town, lock, stock, and barrel, a mile down the road. This castle has to be one of the finest in Europe.